I never wanted to work nights at the Quick Stop off Route 9, but nursing school loans don't care if you're exhausted or scared or hungry. They just keep coming. After my ex skipped town with my savings, leaving me and Rex, my old German shepherd, scraping by in a crumbling duplex, the graveyard shift was the only gig I could grab without a 3-month background check and 2 interviews. Immediate hire, the Craigslist ad had promised. I thought it was lucky. It wasn't. The Quick Stop was barely a gas station anymore. Half the pumps were dead, the coffee tasted like it was brewed through an old sock, and the only things moving. At midnight were drunk truckers, meth heads, and desperate people like me. The fluorescent lights buzzed so loud I could hear them over the highway. The break room smelled like burnt popcorn and despair. Management left notes about reducing shrinkage, but never fixed the broken cameras or hired a second body for night shifts. I told myself it would just be temporary. A few months, maybe a year. Long enough to chip away at the loans. Long enough to breathe. But the first night, standing behind that scratched-up counter, watching a stray cat limp across the parking lot under those dying lights, I realized something. Desperation doesn't just attract bad luck. It invites it, like blood in the water. Rex would curl up by the front door when I left at 10:30 every night, tail thumping against the cracked tile, and I'd promise him I'd be back by sunrise. I'd say it like a prayer. I meant it. God, I meant it. The first week passed in a fog of Monster energy drinks and stale cigarettes. I thought I'd settle into it. Then came the man with the busted jacket and the twitchy eye, and everything started to unravel. It was 11:47 p.m. when the bell over the door jingled, and he stumbled in. He was rail thin, wearing a Carhartt jacket so stained it looked painted on. His left eye twitched violently like a bad signal struggling to come through. His boots squeaked with every step, leaving wet marks on the tile. But he didn't head for the register or the coffee. He just paced, up and down the cooler aisle, clicking his tongue against his teeth. Wet clicking, like chewing gum that wasn't there. I kept my hand under the counter, fingers brushing the panic button. I should have called the cops, but I'd already gotten a warning about wasting resources on harmless weirdos. Corporate policy: only call if there's a weapon or blood. Otherwise, de-escalate. Smile. Be polite. Pretend you're not scared out of your mind. "Sir?" I said, voice cracking. "You okay?" He froze. His head snapped toward me so fast I thought he might break his neck. "They're in the walls," he hissed. His voice was thick like it hurt him to speak. Then he bolted, straight out the door. The bell jangled violently behind him, swinging on its little chain like a dying pendulum. I stood there, heart hammering, staring at the empty doorway. The parking lot stretched out into blackness, the broken pumps shining like bones under the flickering lights. No sign of him. I told myself it was just a junkie. Bad meth, maybe. Hallucinations. Happens all the time. Still, I double-checked the locks, pulled the heavy steel over the cigarette case, counted the seconds until sunrise. When I finally clocked out, Rex wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. I scratched behind his ears, pretending everything was normal. But when I closed my eyes that morning, all I could hear was that wet, clicking sound, echoing between the thin walls of my crumbling duplex. And I dreamed of shadows moving behind the drywall. By the second week, the overnight shift had settled into a miserable kind of rhythm. Stock the candy aisle, check the bathroom for graffiti, count the smokes, listen to the endless hum of bad wiring. At 2:33 a.m., the store phone rang. Nobody calls Quick Stop at 2:30 in the morning unless it's bad. A drunk stuck at the pumps, a supplier with the wrong delivery schedule, maybe a wrong number, some kid messing around I almost didn't answer. But training kicked in. Always answer, always document. Quick Stop, gas and go. Route 9, I said, forcing fake cheer into my voice. First, silence. Then, clicking. Wet, close, right in my ear. It sounded like something chewing on the receiver. And underneath it, a whisper. "You left the basement window unlocked." My mouth went dry. My hands shook so bad I dropped the receiver. The basement. I didn't even have a key to the basement. I slammed down the receiver and bolted the front door, then the back. Shoved the broom handle through the push bars for extra measure. My heart thudded so loud I thought I'd black out. Every noise felt like a threat. The buzz of the cooler, the creak of the ice machine outside. I kept picturing that guy in the jacket, wedged in the walls like a rat, clicking his tongue and smiling. Didn't call the cops because what would I say? Hi, some guy clicked at me through the phone. Corporate would have laughed me right out of my paycheck. I made it to sunrise without breathing too hard somehow. I drove home on autopilot, white-knuckled, eyes flicking to every shadow on the side of the road. When I pulled into the driveway, Rex was already at the window, ears pinned back, growling low, and that's when I saw it. The basement window, hanging open, curtain fluttering in the morning breeze like a waving hand. Rex didn't stop growling the whole way down the basement stairs, had a hammer in one hand, phone in the other, thumb ready to dial 911 at the first sign of anything. The basement was cold, damp, the kind of damp that gets into your lungs and stays there. And it smelled wrong. Not just mildew and old water heaters, something sharp, rotten, like spoiled meat, and copper pennies. Rex stopped dead in front of the water heater, his hackles standing on end. I edged around him, hammer raised. That's when I saw it. Behind the heater, stuffed into the tight corner between the pipes and the wall, was a nest. My missing hoodies, my old flannel, even a couple of Rex's shredded toys, all balled together into a stinking mattress. On the concrete wall above it, scratched deep with what looked like a kitchen knife, were the words, "Feed me." I staggered back, stomach twisting, and then I saw the knives, arranged in a neat, horrifying smiley face on the floor, all from my kitchen drawer. Knives I hadn't even noticed were missing. I called the cops finally, voice barely working. They found more when they searched. 17 empty Slim Jim wrappers stuffed into the ductwork. A sleeping bag still warm to the touch under the stairs. Size, 12 boot prints matching the security footage from Quick Stop. They said it was probably a homeless squatter. Maybe the twitchy guy from the gas station. Maybe someone else entirely. They didn't catch him. The detective told me to secure my home better and offered a pamphlet about personal safety. No apology, no real answers. That night I dragged Rex's bed into the kitchen and wedged a tire iron between my mattress and the wall. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the basement door and listened to the pipes breathing in the walls. I quit Quick Stop up the next week. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't stand under those flickering lights, watching every drunken tweaker stumble through the door, wondering if tonight was the night the clicking would start again. I got a bartending gig instead. Worse tips, shorter hours, but at least it was loud enough to drown out the noise in my head. I still live in that crappy duplex because rent's cheap and student loans don't forgive themselves. Still keep Rex's bed by the door. Still sleep with a tire iron close, enough to grab in the dark. The basement window is nailed shut now, but some nights, especially when the wind kicks up off the highway, I swear I hear it. A soft, wet clicking, like teeth on tile. The new guy they hired at Quick Stop, some college kid named Tyler, texted me last week. Said sometimes when he's closing up, he hears clicking behind the energy drink cooler, asked if I ever had problems with the pipes. I almost told him, almost warned him about the boot-shaped stain under the basement window, about the messages scratched into the concrete, about how sometimes the night shift doesn't end just because the sun comes up. But I didn't, because it wouldn't matter. Desperation always finds a way back inside, just like he did. I didn't grow up dreaming of guarding graves, but after Hollowbrook's last steel mill downsized 2 years ago, dreams stopped being part of the equation. I'd worked that mill 23 years, breathing in soot, welding in 100-degree summers, clocking overtime when the pay was good. And then one day, a man in a crisp shirt I'd never seen before handed me a final paycheck and a pamphlet about retraining opportunities. At 48 years old, retraining sounded a lot like starting over broke. I took the job at Blackthorn Grove because it was there. The cemetery always needed a night watchman, not because of grave robbers or vandals. No one in Hollowbrook cared about the dead anymore. It was about insurance, liability, keeping the illusion of dignity around cracked tombstones and rotted mausoleums. The pay wasn't much, barely enough to cover the rent on my one-bedroom apartment above McCullough's Auto Parts. But it came, with quiet, and after my wife Anna packed up our daughter and moved 3 states away, quiet was about all I had left. Every night I lace up my boots, zip my coat against the bone-deep cold, and walk the same worn paths. The grave markers tilt like broken teeth. The angels watch with eroded faces. And the deeper you go into the cemetery, the thicker the fog gets, curling around your ankles, swallowing the weak beam of your flashlight. People ask me if it's scary. I always say no. The dead don't bother me. It's the living that worry me. The ones desperate enough to steal copper wiring from mausoleums or break open old crypts looking for jewelry. Still, the job was simple. Make rounds. Log anything unusual. Keep moving. But lately, Blackthorn Grove has felt wrong. Not the usual wrong that comes from decay and forgotten graves. Something else. Something under the skin of it all, humming like a bad fever. Tonight, that feeling's heavier than ever. The fog's thicker, the radio's dead, and somewhere past the old Whitmore crypt, fresh footprints wait for me in the mud. I pull my coat tighter and keep walking. Because in Hollowbrook, you survive by pretending you don't see the things that want to see you. I found the footprints, near the Whitmore family plot. At first I thought maybe a deer had wandered through, the kind that sometimes drift down from the hills, half-starved and desperate. But these were boots. Heavy ones. Deep tread marks sunk into the wet earth, too wide to be mined, spaced like someone moving slow and deliberate. They weren't fresh. Maybe an hour old, hard to tell in the cold. But they were wrong. Nobody should have been in here. The gates, lock at sundown, and the old brick wall around Blackthorn Grove isn't the kind of thing you just climb for fun. Razor wire runs along the top, rusted but sharp. I shined my flashlight along the rows of tilted headstones. The beam caught nothing but fog and bare trees. The radio clipped to my belt gave a half-hearted crackle, then went silent again. My first instinct was to call it in, follow protocol. But the last time I reported something, the broken security lights by the northern wall, my supervisor, Darla, chewed me out for being jumpy. "We don't need ghost stories on the time card," she said. "Just punch your rounds and keep your head down." So I didn't call. I told myself it was probably some kid looking for a place to drink or dare his buddies. I told myself a lot of things. I followed the prints, slow and careful. They veered off the gravel path, weaving through headstones like the walker knew exactly where they were going, past the Whitmores, past the old Ridley Mausoleum with its crumbling gargoyle, toward the oldest part of Blackthorn Grove, the place where the records get spotty, where headstones are just chunks of stone, names and dates worn smooth by rain and time, where even the rats don't seem to go. The footprints ended at the door of an ancient stone crypt. No name, no marker. Just a thick iron door rusted into place. At least it should have been rusted into place, because tonight it hung slightly ajar. I stood there staring at that cracked open crypt longer than I care to admit. The iron door was massive, built back when Hollowbrook had money, and the dead were buried with marble and gold instead of cheap plywood caskets. Even with both hands and a crowbar, I probably couldn't budge it, yet there it was, gapped open just wide enough for someone or something to slip inside. A smarter man might have walked away, logged it in the notebook and left it for daylight. But pride's a hell of a thing even when you're worn down and half broke. I stepped forward, flashlight in one hand, free hand on the pepper spray clipped to my belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The smell hit me first, not the earthy rot of wet leaves or old graves. Something sharper, chemical, like old bleach mixed with meat left too long in the sun. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open, a few inches more with my boot. The hinges groaned like an old man's last breath. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, catching stone walls slick with condensation. No graffiti, no trash, No signs of the usual idiot kids. But in the center of the crypt, something glinted. I edged inside, boots crunching on the damp floor. My light found it. A pile of small objects laid out carefully on a cracked marble slab. Toys. Tiny, broken toys. A matchbox car with one wheel missing. A stuffed rabbit with its ears chewed, ragged. A plastic soldier melted and fused to a stone. Each, one carefully arranged in a circle around an empty child-sized coffin. The hair on the back of my neck rose. The coffin wasn't just empty. It was shattered. Splinters scattered like something had clawed its way out. Not in. A gust of wind slammed the crypt door shut behind me, pitching the whole space into darkness, and somewhere, close, too close, I heard it. A tiny, wet laugh. My hand fumbled for the flashlight, heart hammering in my ears. The beam stuttered, to life, casting frantic, shaky light across the crypt walls. Nothing there. Just cracked stone and old carvings, too worn to read. I backed toward the door, fingers slick with sweat. The handle turned, but the iron was swollen tight. Locked from the outside somehow, or maybe just stuck with age and damp. Either way, I wasn't getting out without a fight. The laugh came again, higher this time, almost a giggle. Echoing around the stone walls, I pressed my back to the door and listened hard. No footsteps, no breathing, just the wind wheezing through the cracks. My brain raced for answers. Some kid, maybe? Someone messing with me? But what kind of kid sneaks into a crumbling crypt at midnight to leave a circle of broken toys? I swept the light over the coffin again. Splinters everywhere, deep gouges in the stone floor like fingernails, or something worse. I needed to get out. Now. I braced my boots against the floor and threw my shoulder into the door. It groaned, budged an inch. Again, harder. The rusted metal scraped open just enough for me to squeeze through, tearing my jacket sleeve in the process. I stumbled out into the night air, gulping down great lungfuls of fog. The cemetery stretched around me, endless rows of forgotten dead, and standing 50 yards away, by the broken angel statue, was a figure. Small, child-sized, barefoot. It stood still as stone, head tilted too far to one side, watching me. I raised the flashlight, but when the beam touched it, the thing dissolved into mist. I didn't stop to question it. I just ran. Across the gravel paths, past the rotting gates, lungs burning from cold air and fear. By the time I reached the main office shack, I slammed the door and bolted it behind me. The radio crackled to life on the desk. Static, then a whisper. Lucas, it knew my name. I sat in the office shack, hands trembling so bad I nearly dropped the radio. The cracked plastic speaker let out another burst of static, then nothing. I didn't try to answer. I just listened. To the dead hum of the overhead lights, the rattle of the wind clawing at the window panes. Blackthorn Grove stretched out in the dark. All those broken stones and dead names. I should have left, should have walked out, quit on the spot, turned in my key and never looked back. But rent was due in 3 days. And there aren't a lot of jobs left for a 50-year-old man coughing up his lungs every morning. So I stayed. Sunrise found me sitting at the desk, bloodshot eyes staring at the fog-thick windows. When Darla showed up for the morning shift, I didn't say a word. She didn't ask, just gave me a look like she knew something was wrong, then clocked herself in. I logged my shift the way I was supposed to. No incidents to report. Because in Hollowbrook, you don't talk about the things you see when you're desperate enough to work the night shift at a dying cemetery. You don't talk about cold, laughing shadows or footprints that start and don't end. You just keep your head down. Keep moving. Hope whatever crawled out of that coffin finds someone else next time. Sometimes, though, usually when the fog rolls extra thick off the river, I see little wet footprints across the gravel outside the shack. Hear tiny knocks at the door that no one else seems to notice. And sometimes, deep in the pit of my chest, I swear, I feel a small, cold hand slip into mine. I squeeze my eyes shut. I don't look. I just keep walking my rounds. Because the dead at Blackthorn Grove, they don't want to be forgotten, and they don't like being left alone. You don't dream about working nights at a law firm. You don't dream much at all when you're drowning in debt. When my landlord jacked the rent on my dingy studio apartment by $400 overnight, I didn't have options. I already owed 2 months on my mom's hospice care, and the pile of medical bills from last year's car wreck had started to threaten collections. The temp agency didn't even bother sugarcoating it. Overnight document review at Holloway and Graves. $28 an hour. Bring your own coffee. I didn't care about the hours or the isolation. All I heard was enough to make rent, enough to keep the lights on, buy another bottle of ibuprofen for my still busted knee, maybe send mom a little extra for better sheets. The building was a monolith in the financial district, 32 stories of glass and steel. Clean, cold, anonymous. At night, it emptied out so completely it felt like working inside a mausoleum. Perfect. I didn't want anyone asking me about the limp or why I flinched when I heard loud noises. First night, security scanned my ID and gave me a nod so perfunctory I could have been a ghost already. Only one on 32, he said, pressing the elevator button without looking at me. Copy machine's fussy, he added. Don't call us unless it's a fire. That was it. No orientation, no safety walkthrough. Just good luck, don't die. I got off at 32 and the doors slid shut behind me with a sound like a vault locking. The floor was endless gray carpet and glass conference rooms. Monitors glowed in the dark, casting eerie blue reflections across abandoned desks. HVAC rumbled somewhere above, a hollow sound like a giant breathing. I set up my station, logged into the review database, and started slogging through contracts written in a language that looked human, but had long since lost any soul. At 11:03 p.m. I heard it, the distinct, sharp clack of high heels pacing the marble hallway outside my cubicle. I froze, hands poised over my keyboard. Security said I was alone. The elevators hadn't moved, but the steps kept coming. Steady, relentless. At first, I told myself it was nothing, the HVAC kicking on maybe. An old building like this could make sounds. Pipes, expanding, wind rattling somewhere high above. But the longer I sat there, the more deliberate it sounded. Heels, hard, echoing against the marble. Coming closer, then drifting away like someone pacing in frustration. I got up, craning my neck toward the hallway. Empty. The glass walls showed my own nervous reflection, pale and slouched in my borrowed office chair. The monitor's blue light flattened everything, made the place feel underwater. I called down to security. Nobody picked up. The clacking stopped. I went back to work. Around 1:17 a.m., things got worse. First, my coffee disappeared. I swear I only turned away from my desk for a second, just long enough to grab a file from the printer. When I came back, the cup was gone. No ring on the desk, no puddle, like it had never been there at all. Then the copier near the conference room came alive, spitting out sheet after sheet of paper. I shuffled over, thinking some auto-diagnostic had kicked in. 17 pages, all blank, except for a faint imprint. One word, almost invisible unless you tilted the paper just right. Help. By now the cold had set in, a deep, wet cold that no building this sealed off from the outside should have. I sat back at my desk, hugging my jacket tighter around me. Shadows stretched across the windows, darkening corners that had been empty minutes before. When I blinked, the shadows seemed to twitch, to crawl just a little closer. I tried to work. I tried. But every time I glanced up from the screen, I saw something in the glass. Not a shape exactly. Not yet. Just something wrong. By 3:45 a.m., I wasn't pretending anymore. I grabbed my bag and made for the elevators, heart pounding in my throat, and that's when Carlos, the janitor, found me. Carlos was pushing a battered mop bucket down the hall when he saw me, standing there like a statue by the elevators, gasping for air I couldn't seem to catch. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't tell me to calm down, just nodded and said, "Ah, you saw her." I didn't correct him, didn't ask who. Somehow I already knew. He leaned on his mop like a man much older than he looked and told me the story. How back in 2008, during the crash, Holloway and Graves bled its junior associates dry trying to stay afloat. All-nighters, double shifts. Cases stacked 6 feet high. Eleanor Whitmore was one of them, a bright, sharp young lawyer, the kind who still believed she could make partner if she just worked hard enough. One weekend, she didn't go home, just stayed at her desk typing. Until her fingers cramped. They found her 3 days later, slumped forward, heart stopped. Fingers still hovering over the keyboard. The partners had the decency to cover it up. Quiet settlement to the family. No memorial, no plaque, just packed up her things and filled the chair with someone else. But sometimes, Carlos said, voice low, she comes back looking for her overtime. I wanted to laugh, wanted to believe it was just an old man's ghost story. But laughter caught in my throat because deep down, I already knew it wasn't just a story. I felt her still there, watching me. Carlos shook his head, squeezed my shoulder gently. "If you're smart," he said, "you'll leave." The elevator dinged. I stepped inside. Before the doors closed, I caught a flash of movement down the hall, like a woman in a gray pencil skirt, hair neatly tied back, walking straight toward me. Slammed the button for the ground floor, praying I wasn't too late. Back at my desk, I tried to convince myself it was fine. 1 more hour. Finish the shift. Collect the paycheck. Nothing was fine. At 4:12 a.m., I saw her for real. Not a trick of the light. Not the whisper of fabric against glass. In the black mirror of my powered-off monitor, she stood behind me. Eleanor Whitmore. Pale as a blank Word document, eyes sunken, too dark and deep to see the bottom. Suit pristine, heels sharp, manicured nails tapping at the air like she was still looking for her missing work. Her mouth moved. No sound. Just one word over and over again. Overtime. I turned to look. Nothing there. I turned back to the monitor. There she was, closer. Every part of me screamed to run, to tear out of the building and never look back. But it was like my feet were frozen to the floor, like some invisible hand was pressing me down into the chair. The monitor flickered. The other screens around the office lit up one by one, each one flashing the same word in block white letters. Overtime. 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 The glass walls distorted, warping the cubicles into something endless and gray and dead. I slammed my badge down on the reception desk on my way out. I didn't even stop for my bag. I didn't even stop for the paycheck. The temp agency blacklisted me. Breach of contract, they said. Unprofessional behavior, they said. I didn't argue. Now I drive Uber at night, easier on the knee, easier on the mind. Sometimes I pick up late shift lawyers from downtown. Sometimes when the ride is quiet, I ask if they've heard of Holloway and Graves. They always change the subject. One guy even got out a block early, wouldn't look me in the eye. Last I heard, Holloway and Graves got sold off in a merger. The 32-story building got demolished last year. New condos going up. Glass towers for people who'll never think about what was buried under the marble floors. But construction. Workers kept reporting cold spots, tools disappearing, elevator doors opening and closing without reason. Me, I still dream of her sometimes. I'll be stopped at a red light in the middle of the night, half asleep behind the wheel, and in the rearview mirror, I'll see a pair of manicured hands tapping at my windshield. Waiting. Eleanor Whitmore never stopped working, and she's still looking for someone to cover her overtime. By the time Big Tony's hired me, I was already underwater. Student loans I could barely touch. Hospital bills for my dad's heart surgery last month, half covered by some garbage insurance plan that dropped him the second he got sick. My mom was juggling 3 jobs. My sister picked up extra shifts at CVS, and I was desperate enough to take the overnight gig at Big Tony's, $12.50 an hour under the table. No taxes, no questions, no security either. But who the hell could afford to be picky? The place was a dump. Black and white checkered floors so stained, they looked gray. Grease caked onto the fryer vents. The neon "Open 24 hours" sign buzzed and flickered so much it made my eyes ache. The smell, burnt pepperoni and old fryer oil, clung to every thread of my clothes, my hair, my skin. Even after 3 showers, I still smelled like a walking slice. My shift started at 10 p.m. Tony would lock up his office upstairs, hand me the keys to the register, and mutter, "No deliveries after midnight. Don't open the door unless they call ahead." Then he'd leave. No security guard, no backup. Just me, the ovens, and the crackheads who sometimes banged on the windows after last call. But I needed the money. I needed something to keep the lights on at home, to maybe buy Dad's prescriptions without maxing out another card. First couple nights it was just the usual weirdos. Guys too drunk to order straight. Kids trying to scam free garlic knots. Then came the third night. The night the delivery bell chimed at 12:45 a.m. and nobody was there. The bell over the door rang, a sharp ding that made me jump. I looked up, expecting another drunk college kid. Fumbling for pizza money. Nothing. Just the dark parking lot beyond the glass doors. The only movement was the busted street light flickering out by the dumpster. I shook it off. Maybe the wind caught the door. Maybe I imagined it. I went back to wiping down the counter. Ding again. Nobody. Just the hum of the soda machine behind me and the low buzz of the neon sign. I squinted at the security feed mounted above the register. 4 angles. The kitchen, the lot, the dining area, the back alley. The feed facing the front door was pure static, white fuzz crawling across the screen like insects. I tapped the monitor. Nothing. Checked the plug. Secure. The other cameras worked fine. Only the door feed was dead. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was a tech glitch. Old building, old wires. I went back to folding boxes, stacking them into the crooked leaning tower behind the counter. That's when the oven timer started going berserk. Beep, 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 beep. I hit the cancel button. It kept beeping. Finally, I yanked the damn plug out of the wall. The beeping stopped, but the sudden silence was worse. Too thick, too heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. From the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow stretch along the tile, thin and impossibly long, slipping past the kitchen doorway. I told myself it was a trick of the bad lighting. I told myself a lot of things that night. The soda machine sputtered behind me, rattling like something stuck inside it. When I turned, it spat out a full cup of flat Coke, the brown liquid foaming out of the machine onto the floor in slow, sticky waves. I didn't clean it up, didn't even move. I stood there, clutching the counter like it might anchor me to something real. The clock above the menu board ticked over to 2:30 a.m. Every inch of my skin prickled like ants were crawling just beneath the surface. The kitchen lights flickered once, twice. Long shadows stretched across the prep tables. They didn't look right. They were too tall, too thin, like something was standing just out of sight, behind the swinging door. I called out. "Hello? We're closed." My voice sounded small, weak. No answer. Just the low, oily hum of the walk-in freezer behind the kitchen. I tried to get back to work, counting the till for the end of the shift, but my hands shook so badly I dropped a roll of quarters. They scattered across the tile, bouncing and spinning into the dark. That's when I felt it, the weight of eyes on me, like a hand resting just above my shoulder, ready to press down. I looked up, and he was there. He stood just inside the kitchen doorway, dressed head to toe in black, hoodie, jeans, boots, one hand dangling at his side, gripping a butcher knife, the blade glinting under the buzzing fluorescent lights. His face was wrong, smooth, empty. No anger, no fear, no recognition, just blank. I tried to speak, but it came out in a croak. "Take it," I said, shoving the cash drawer toward him. He didn't move. just tilted his head to the side, slow and jerky, like a dog hearing a high-pitched noise. The knife dragged along the floor as he took a step forward. Panic slammed into me like a fist. I vaulted the counter, ankle screaming as I landed on the greasy tile. The knife clattered behind me, loud as a gunshot. I didn't wait to see if he was chasing me. I ran, past the gum-stuck booths, past the crusted-up soda machine, out into the night air, my lungs burning, the stink of tomato sauce and fryer oil clinging to my skin. I didn't stop running until I hit the 24-hour laundromat 3 blocks down, collapsing against the humming dryers. Nobody asked why I was crying. Nobody asked why my shirt was smeared with grease and fear. The cops showed up eventually. They made the usual noises. Looks like a break-in. We'll pull footage. Probably just some junkie. They didn't even look surprised when they found the back door propped open with a bent pizza tray. Every kitchen knife laid out on the prep table in a neat spiral. My half-eaten shift meal stacked back in the fridge, bite marks in the crust. That weren't mine. They didn't find the man, didn't fix the broken camera, didn't fix anything. Tony offered me another shift the next night, said he'd throw in a free slice. I quit, didn't even ask for the cash he owed me. Now I work day, shifts at a Subway uptown. It's boring. It's slow, and the worst thing I deal with is soccer moms complaining about the bread. But sometimes when the oven timers ding, I jump a little, and when the soda machine sputters, my hands start to shake. Somewhere out there, I know he's still walking around, the man in black, with his blank face and his quiet knife. Still looking for someone dumb enough to work the night shift alone. Still watching. I didn't plan on working nights at Nexus Data Solutions. Honestly, I didn't plan on dropping out of nursing school either. But life has a way of kicking you sideways. My brother overdosed last year. Fentanyl, the cheap stuff. He lived somehow, but rehab wasn't cheap. Insurance barely scratched the surface, and my parents were tapped out from the first 2 rounds of treatment. So I put my applications on hold and took the first gig I could find. Night tech at Nexus, $18 an hour. No benefits, no future. Just me, babysitting racks of servers blinking mindlessly into the dark. The data center was a squat, windowless bunker 20 miles outside Phoenix. Nothing around but dry brush, chain-link fences, and the occasional coyote slinking past the floodlights. Inside, it was all freezing cold air and endless rows of humming machines. Every shift was the same. Scan the server banks, log the uptimes, reset the occasional overheated unit. Dead simple. Mind-numbing. Most nights I just parked myself at the monitoring station with a lukewarm coffee and Netflix running in the background, earbuds tucked in under my hoodie. There was always a weird stillness to the place after midnight. Sound carried differently under the raised floors. The server fans sang a constant low hum, punctuated by the mechanical whir of the cooling system kicking on and off like a giant breathing lung. Sometimes I thought I could hear footsteps between the rows when I was sure I was alone. Sometimes I convinced myself it was just the building settling. That night started no different. A cold cup of gas station coffee, my favorite trashy true crime doc loaded up, and the endless blue blink of uptime, until 1:17 a.m. when everything changed. I was halfway through an episode about a guy who bludgeoned 3 people with a framing hammer when the stream froze. Right. On the killer's grimace, annoyed, I clicked around. Internet dead. Then the server dashboard popped up an angry red alert. Server Bank C, offline. I frowned. Bank C was old but stable. It hadn't gone down once since I started 2 months ago. Hell, some of those units had uptime going back 5 years. Sighing, I grabbed my flashlight and clipboard and headed into the server hall. Cold air bit at my skin through the cheap company fleece. The further I walked, the less natural the lights felt, like the fluorescents were buzzing just slightly off tune. I found Bank C easily enough. The bottom half of the stack was dark. Following protocol, I checked the main power line and froze. The primary cable wasn't yanked or torn like it should have been in a real fault. It was unplugged and coiled neatly on the floor, placed there, deliberate. I backed away slowly, hard hammering. Checked my work tablet. Security log showed no door entry since I clocked in. Nobody in or out. I scanned the shadows between the rows. Nothing. Nothing but that prickle on the back of my neck, that heavy certainty that something was wrong. I should have called it in. I should have left. Instead, I plugged the cable back in with a shaking hand and told myself maybe the cleaning crew had messed up during day shift. Except I knew better. The cleaning crew didn't work weekends, and this was Saturday night. I hurried back to the control room, telling myself I was just tired, just seeing things. Then the sound started. It began around 2:33 a.m. A wet cough, muffled but sharp, cutting through the quiet like a knife. It came from the backup tape archive room, the one with the old reels nobody touched anymore. I stared at the hallway camera feed, empty. Another cough, closer this time. I yanked out my earbuds, heart hammering in my ears. Then, the fire door to Lot B slammed. Once, twice, 3 times. Each slam was perfectly spaced, almost mechanical, like someone hitting a stopwatch between hits. I pulled up the security dashboard. No alarm, no breach notification. But I knew what I heard. And then, just to top it off, the cooling vent above the control desk hissed open, and I swear to God, I heard my own voice whisper back to me, "You shouldn't be here." My skin broke out in goosebumps so hard it felt like my flesh was trying to leave my bones. I locked the control room door. Standard policy was to check disturbances immediately. But screw that. No amount of company loyalty was worth getting murdered in a freezing warehouse full of blinking lights. I pulled my hoodie tighter and curled into the chair, staring at the flickering monitors, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination, stress, lack of sleep, too much caffeine. Except the power alert had been real. The unplugged cable had been real. I sat there frozen for over an hour until the lights in the executive wing started to flicker, and I realized someone or something was moving toward. The executive offices were down a hallway I normally avoided. Old school carpet, fake plants, plaques with names of guys who probably hadn't touched a keyboard in a decade. When the overhead lights there began stuttering, it was like watching a dying animal twitch. I grabbed my flashlight and, against every survival instinct, screaming in my skull, stepped into the hall. The air was wrong. Too cold, sharp with the metallic tang of antifreeze and something else. Ozone, maybe? I barely made it 10 feet before he burst out of the CFO's suite. Tall, wearing a Nexus maintenance uniform 2 sizes too small, stretched tight over his wiry frame. His face was pale and slick, streaked with something that looked like server coolant, a sickly green sheen under the emergency lights. For a second, we just stared at each other. Me frozen, him grinning. His teeth were too white, too straight, like a mannequin's. He cocked his head, playful almost, then bolted toward the emergency exit at the end of the hall. I didn't chase. I turned and ran straight back to the control room, slammed the door, and hit every lock I could find. I called 911, hands fumbling the numbers, voice shaking as I tried to explain that someone was. Inside, they promised they'd send someone, eventually. I huddled there, clutching a screwdriver like it was a weapon, praying the locked door would hold. Cops showed up an hour later. By then, the building was still again. They swept the place, found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, no fingerprints. What they did find was worse. 17 servers in Bank C wiped clean. No logs, no backups, just empty husks where client data used to be. Under the raised floor, near the back, they found a nest. Piles of empty Monster Energy cans, beef jerky wrappers, a disgusting sleeping bag, like someone had been living there for days, maybe longer. They found the maintenance jumpsuit too, discarded in a ball under the cooling ducts, stinking of coolant and copper. Security footage showed nothing, not a single person entering or exiting for 72 hours. They chalked it up to a homeless squatter, filed it, forgot about it. Nexus fired me 2 days later for breach of protocol. No severance, no apology. Now I work days at a library downtown. The pay sucks, but it's quiet, safe. Still, sometimes when the HVAC hums on, I catch a whiff of that sharp metallic smell and feel my skin crawl. And some nights, when I check the server forums out of habit, I see rumors. Phantom pings from server bank C glitch alerts at exactly 3:17 a.m. Nobody checks them anymore. Not after what happened to me. But somewhere out there, in the concrete desert outside Phoenix, I know he's still there, still watching, still smiling.